Dua Lipa sued by paparazzi.
Deja Vu's new co-writers.
And Egypt's underground music scene. You're listening to The Biztape.
Welcome to episode 42 of The Biztape, your all things music business and media podcast. I'm your host, Joe, with my co-host, Colin. And, Colin, we're going to do something today that I feel like every, middle-aged white suburban dad does.
Okay, I'm a little scared,
and
but keep going.
You know what it is?
What?
We're going to rock and roll.
Oh, man. Okay. That could have gone a number of ways, and I would have been very scared which way the way.
But you know where you can see us rock and roll? In real time.
I was going to say, also, you won't see the middle-aged dads because they don't know how to use it. You can see it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at The Biztape, and email thebiztapepodcast@gmail.com.
They know how to use Facebook.
We also have a TikTok now because we're cool like that. Yeah, because we're well, the joke is that always the older generation gets on a social media platform and now it's dead. I don't think we're there yet with TikTok, but we're getting there, and I'm waiting for the younger generation to be like, it's over.
I don't think we're there yet. I think we got another couple of years because we still have I still see the Reddit posts that are like, TikTok is just for children.
Yeah.
It's just for children, Colin.
Yeah,
it's not
still
like
there.
It makes millions of dollars or.
Exactly. And this ain't going away like Vine did. So we got some time.
Yeah, it's got some growth coming. So.
Okay. So first thing I really wanted to talk about.
Gotcha.
I'm very about it because I think I have. On the show, I like to come in here with my little theories, and this is one of my theories, and I talked to you a little bit about it off mic, but you'll see what I mean. So we have Taylor Swift, Jack Antonoff, and St. Vincent. We're giving co-writer credits on Olivia Rodrigo's Deja Vu. One of her biggest songs, arguably probably her biggest song other than maybe Good For You.
What about Driver's License?
Yeah, Driver's License might have, one of those three, but this is definitely one of her biggest songs currently right now. So they were giving co-writer credits with basically Rodrigo, if you guys don't know, is a big Swiftie. And she is all about Taylor Swift. And she told Rolling Stone in April of this year that the bridge of Cruel Summer, a Taylor Swift song from the album Lover, which she covered for MTV's Alone Together jam session, that basically that song inspired the bridge of Deja Vu. And so Sour also has had issues with co-writing credits. They had a song called I Step Forward, Three Steps Back, which then everyone started Googling the word interpolated because everyone would go, that song was interpolated. And everyone would go, what are you talking about? All that means is that you kind of use your artistic voice and basically be like, I'm kind of taking this, but it's not actually the actual song. The reason with that song is because the piano part and the layout of it is very similar. So that's the adult, if you were a musicologist, you would be like interpolation. But anyway, that they interpolated New Year's Day from Taylor Swift and Antonoff, which gave them their first writing credits on the album. And now this is the second song to have Taylor and Antonoff and St. Vincent now on it, which also the other writer other than Rodrigo was her producer, which is Daniel Nigro, who has a writing credit making the songwriting split for that song 5 different ways, which is huge because this is one of her biggest songs.
Yeah, so it's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, because you're going from, like we've talked about on this show, there's the recorded music revenue from the actual recorded song, and then there's the song itself, which is usually called just the publishing money. And so you're taking that side of it, the publishing money, and now instead of getting split 50-50, it's getting split 20-20-20-20-20 for Deja Vu, which is a huge deal. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
An extreme, but if you don't know, publishing money basically incorporates what the PRs collect. So if your song's played at a public venue, your public performance royalty, it also has your sync licensing. So obviously when Deja Vu goes out and then
it's
on a
Netflix show or anything like that, it gets paid a bunch of money.
That's the sync licensing. And then you have the mechanicals, which is the most easy to understand, which is basically the money paid to songwriters whenever your song is copied. It used to be CDs and other things. Now it's just streams. But that's a lot of money. And it's the thing that I'm interested in going into what my theory is about this is that Rodrigo and Swift have basically been like, oh, we're really good friends. and we really like each other and we really vibe with each other. And so we're doing this, and it almost seems like a narrative of Rodrigo being like, oh yeah, she should get that money because I was influenced by her. But it's a little tame, if you get what I mean, because it's a lot of money.
Artists are influenced by many artists.
So
you don't see them giving them songwriting.
And we'll get into this argument, but like, again, you're going from a 50 to 20 split on arguably the money that has the side of the money, the publishing money that has the longest longevity to make money in the future compared to the recorded music. So this usually would be a huge, big legal thing. Like people would be pissed. People would be like, oh my God, and if you've ever heard in songwriting, this is where you make your money, is the publishing money. But instead they're going really tame. So I think personally, this is the theory, that Taylor Swift and her team and Rodrigo's team, basically, they had a conversation about some of these songs, saying like, you're saying all over in the presses, we have you on video, we have you on different journals, basically saying that Taylor Swift's a huge influence for you in specific songs. And even so, you've performed this specific song that is giving this writing credit on Deja Vu. So instead of making this big, huge deal of being like, oh, Olivia Rodrigo stole part of my song or something, like a lot of artists would do, I think the two camps have come together to be more of like, this is a collaboration showing the influence and the impact of Taylor Swift, instead of more negative PR that would be like giant monolith Taylor Swift comes after new artist Olivia Rodrigo and takes,
Well, why is Jack Antonoff and St. Vincent on there, though?
So Jack Antonoff is a huge writer with Taylor Swift. You may know him from his music with Bleachers, but he is a huge co-creator. He was all over her last, I think, 3 or 4 records. And then I believe St. Vincent was on that specific song, which was Cruel Summer, which, to be honest, out of all those people, I'd probably be like, yeah, St. Vincent, because she's just the coolest to me. But yeah, I think that's my theory, is instead of making this a big PR thing and being like, well, this could go negative on Swift, and seeing her kind of smash a new talent that people have a whole thing about coming into a space of music that's occupied by another artist, like you're stealing things or like you stole this from me. But instead they've decided that the best PR move is just to completely get rid of that, which I completely agree with. And it's more positive press for both of them to be like, oh, we're really good friends, which again, they might be, I don't know. But to get this money taken away is usually a big deal. That's a lot of your money, especially in the long term. So to be like so cool and almost laissez-faire about it is a little strange to me.
It is, and I think you're hitting it on the nose. There was definitely more conversations about this that we didn't see. And just like, I think deeper than she's a friend of mine, so I'm getting her a writing credit, Right.
It's like, I feel like it's getting spun in that way that this is my influence and I feel like this is the right thing to do. And like Taylor seems to be coming out of it like, oh, I love her, she's awesome, and I'm just really glad I could help her, with my music or something like that.
Yeah, but I feel like Taylor does that with a lot of artists.
Yeah, not even that boastful really, but like that's a way different narrative than what could be spun here, is that Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff and even St. Vincent could get somehow thrown as like, oh, you're taking this girl's money. Like you're taking literally 60% between the two of you of the money for one of her biggest songs.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where there's something fishy going on here, but I have no evidence of it. And here's my question to go further on. Do you think there's an innate risk with artists now to say who they're influenced by? So saying like, oh, this album was really influenced. I was listening at the time of this album. So almost giving fans and maybe their teams a giant arrow going, compare these two. Maybe we can get a lawsuit out of it.
Yeah, I think that's always been the case, honestly, since especially publishing rights and royalties have been a thing. I think artist teams generally tell their artists, especially if you're doing press, you have to be very careful with what you say because, a lot of the time you might accidentally say something like that of like, oh, this song was heavily influenced by this. I don't know, like.
And that's how music works. Is that
And
you take it's a melting pot of your influences.
But some artists are a bit more strict than other artists when you mention their name in the press and with your music.
And I wish that in the legal system, it was just a straight up argument being like, oh, okay, we can figure this out. It's almost mathematic in that way. It's like, this song seems like 30% of this song or something, but it's not. It comes down to how much money you guys can live on lawyers, because lawyers are extremely expensive. And so is the legal system. It takes an extreme long time. It comes down to usually expert testimony, like a musicologist and stuff like that. And so it's hard and argumentative in a lot of these cases, even in cases that seem weak, to get this all together, basically, and be like, oh, you took my song. And it's like, well, they're kind of similar.
Yeah, it almost seems a bit, to be honest, like if this is the case, and we're making a lot of assumptions here as well. Like it's not, we don't know.
Theory.
It's a theory, but like in this theory, say it is true. It is very loan sharky to be like, oh, you're in my genre of music now. Oh, you got to pay the artist tax.
I don't even think it's that. It's just more of, for me, thinking that there's no way in any way, if I had one of the biggest albums of this year, saying, oh, I'm just going to let this money get split even more willfully, because I think it's the right thing to do. Artists, in my opinion, in a lot of these cases, will not do that unless they're forced to.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you, in my opinion, there had to have been a conversation where they said, hey, this is kind of like this, and we saw in Rolling Stone that you said this. And so we kind of have to talk about this.
Going up against Taylor Swift's legal team is not fun.
Right. And then and that's kind of the thing. It kind of reminds me of how a plea deal works, where it's like, would you rather take your chances and get a longer sentence, or would you rather get the plea deal, which is kind of what I feel like a lot of these things are. It's like, give them a writing credit. That's like your plea deal out of the situation. They get a cut of the money.
Yeah, for sure. I also think this creates a unique business opportunity for all of these songwriters to come together and make a song together in the future too. Because I feel like now it's like, now you're establishing the narrative that Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo are friends. Okay, well now fans are going to be like, well, I can't wait until they make a song together.
Yeah, and
it's probably going to happen.
Right, instead of all the insane negative press that could be that, oh, okay, well, we're going to sue you, we're going to get this together, and have negative press towards Taylor and Jack Antonoff and all that
stuff. Or St. Vincent.
Or St. Vincent.
She's St. Vincent, dude. She's just like, well,
St. Vincent is very
paid more money.
Yeah, I was going to say, St. Vincent is very tangential in this argument, I think. Like, I don't see a lot of people talking about St. Vincent in this argument specifically. But what I'm trying to say is that I definitely think that it's a new opportunity in the way that the internet works too, because as we were taught in 2003, but even more so when we were growing up now, is that the internet is forever. So if you can find a quote or an article of you performing a song, then it's like, oh, you know about this song's existence. And then on top of that, because you don't have to be a publisher before the internet, you don't have to go through countless newspapers or something.
Yeah.
And then you can also stream everything. So it's not like you're going to have to go buy a record, then compare, and then spend time. That makes it harder to get into this like mode of being like, okay, we're coming after you for your songwriting because I kind of influenced this song and it reminds us of this song, and we might have a case in court because of the ease of use of doing it compared to back in the day. I think this is a very new problem in the sense of its occurrence. I think it's gonna happen more, and I've seen a lot of other people say that it's happening more. And I even asked the Instagram people what they thought about if, these songwriters kind of, do we think there should be yes or no or more lawsuits? And it's kind of all over the place, because I asked people to DM us and they were like, well, in this case, or something like that. And that's the problem with it. It's not black and white. It's all gray.
Yeah.
And it comes down to a court.
Dependent on the situation.
And it's extremely expensive.
Yeah, it is extremely expensive. I think, too, as pop music in particular has grown and developed, I think there is this, it is very highly collaborative now. It's always kind of been collaborative to a certain extent, especially back in the old days where you literally had 8 writers in one building.
Like a Tin Pan Alley situation.
Yeah. But now it's like, well, everything is being sampled. It's being taken from it's literally being taken from other tracks at this point, especially with the use of sampling.
Right. And sampling's even a way different beast that somehow actually feels more black and white because we've developed more rules about how sampling works.
Yeah.
Than this kind of stuff that seems more subjective of being like, this song is kind of like this song. Again, if you're interested, the song is Deja Vu by Olivia Rodrigo, which I'm sure you've heard, and then Cruel Summer. And I listened to both, and you can kind of tell it's like the melody could go on top of one or the other. It's specifically the bridge of Cruel Summer. But it's kind of like, this is arguable. Like I feel like I could argue this in court. It's like, this is kind of similar. This isn't similar enough. And then the same thing with I Step Forward, Three Steps Back by Olivia Rodrigo. And then New Year's Day. That one's even a stronger case because the form of the song is the same. It starts with a piano intro and stuff. Again, if you want it to kind of be in this argument, look them up and see for yourself what you think. The problem is that it's not black and white. It's literally, you could be like, it's kind of similar. But when you have that going on and you have to pay your lawyers thousands upon thousands of dollars an hour, it's easier just to settle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with you. I think they made the correct choice for sure. And
it's positively spinning it, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And then when you were saying the trend of it possibly going in that direction, I think maybe, but it's definitely going to be dependent on artist based, I feel like.
Yeah, and precedent in court,
yeah.
Especially.
Also, I will say this, Taylor Swift's brand is very, nice girl, kind of like helping everybody out in the industry. So it would look particularly bad if she was suing someone.
That's what I said. That's why I was like, let's just avoid this argument altogether.
So you hit that right on the
Which,
nail.
I will say, I'll end it at this before the next comment. If you're on Taylor Swift's team, you're a genius for doing that. If that was the plan, if I'm somehow right, you can get that from me.
Honestly,
if it wasn't, then good. I'm glad y'all are friends. I'm glad you like each other. I'm glad there's a collaboration in music. But if I'm right, hit me up. Talk to me.
I'm nihilistic now, man. Everything is fake.
Well, you kind of have to be in this
Everything is
world.
fake now, But what's interesting, and I guess what's not fake, but might have some fakeness to it, who knows, is today I went down an insane rabbit hole of stories and information about a genre of music based in Egypt called Maharaganat, which means festivals in English. And this genre is a blend of electronic and experimental hip-hop that has exploded in popularity in recent years. Now, Maharaganat was born after what is known as the Arab Spring, which, if you don't remember, was an abundance of anti-government protests that occurred during the early 2010s.
Okay.
And it lasted pretty much until 2020.
Like most good music coming out of a lot of social turmoil.
A lot of social change and rioting and all that stuff. And many of these protests were calling for an increase of human rights and government changes, such as free elections, democracy, economic freedom, women's rights, and many more that caused a ricochet across North Africa into West Asia.
So what'd you find out about this?
So what's very unique and special about the genre is that besides its immense growth and popularity throughout Egypt, the genre first started within many of Egypt's slums and poor communities in the form of street parties and raves that conservative audiences and Egyptian government officials deemed unsuitable for the country's culture, which is it's not a new narrative.
But it's something we're not really familiar with in America.
Oh, that's actually not true.
Oh, okay.
So,
then, prove me wrong. I'm very interested.
the country unsuitable for the country's culture, it's actually since been reversed. And the union that's holding tryouts for it is actually accepting a lot of artists into it. Or at least they're saying they are. Now, the main thing is that the way the Egyptian music industry works is that there's basically a very powerful music union that's called the Musicians Syndicate that acts as...
That sounds evil.
Yeah, it's very
villains.
Orwellian.
Yeah.
And it acts as the enforcer of what the government deems is sonically sanitary for the country.
Oh,
so it's... You kind of, in order to be a musician making money and touring and performing, you have to be in like a union, a musician's union. And you have to be approved and government approved in order to do it. Otherwise, they're going to shut you down, essentially.
Okay.
So just to give you a reference on how the government views the genre, one of Egypt's parliament spokespersons said that Maharaganat is a virus that's, quote, more dangerous than coronavirus for Egyptian society and for all of Arab
And they're
societies.
talking about a blend of electronic and experimental hip-hop?
They're talking about beats, Colin.
Yeah.
So First off, no, it is not. I just want to make that clear. Second off, a lot of music experts have actually drawn a parallel to this genre and how American society viewed hip hop in the early 90s, claiming that it would have negative impacts on youth and that it was dangerous and poisonous to whoever listened.
Like NWA, Public Enemy,
exactly.
all that
and
kind.
It's still a narrative that is heavily drawn with conservative criticism today that's still used. I mean, we saw it with Cardi B WAP.
Yeah.
Like, it comes up every year.
It's dangerous for the children or something.
There's always some conservative like spokesperson that's coming out and saying it's dangerous. We gotta take it down. But so Colin, what do you think about the scene and the structure of Egypt's music industry in general? Like this whole kind of backdoor kind of like, I guess not backdoor because
it's blatant.
It's blatant.
Yeah, it's blatant. I mean, it seems like these musicians have to be backdoored and make sure that they can't really be found as easily, especially they're violating the rights of the musicians syndicate. Home from the musicians syndicate, the evil villains. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Anyway, it reminds me a lot of China in that way that China has their, decency laws and stuff like that, which if you don't know, China has a lot when it comes to movies, television, and music that they vet and then they censor. And there's a lot of authoritative governments that do this. Mm-hmm. And so...
Well, what do you think about this specifically? Because they've actually been making a lot of money. These artists have been making a lot of money, and they've actually started getting on bigger tours and performances.
The syndicate or the artists?
The artists.
Okay.
So the genre Maharaganat is becoming more mainstream and popular.
I feel like like you're saying, there's a lot of historical stuff. I mean, the 90s were very much a good case, like we were talking about with the FBI investigating NWA and all this kind of stuff to see if they're a terrorist organization. And it kind of reminds me of that. And music has always been a vehicle for social change, obviously in this way. And again, like you were saying, it came out of the Arab Spring, which is an abundance of social change in that whole region. So that music is associated with, things that may seem negative in the views of the government for their society to exist. And obviously I don't agree with that because if you're listening to this podcast and you don't believe in free elections, democracy, economic freedom, women's rights, okay, I think I've lost you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm fine with losing you.
And you're probably not even listening.
Right. So the point is that music is a very terrifying and effective vehicle to a lot of authoritative governments when it comes to enacting social change, because if there's one thing music can do, it can really hit the heart and really change people's view and the way they see things. With this genre, it's interesting in the world of globalism that we live in that there's actually an opportunity for them to get out of Egypt and be a huge artist, maybe somewhere else or in different markets. But then oddly enough, where maybe your fan base is in Egypt, it's not allowed.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to go around because we're seeing this in the interconnected world we're in where, okay, I'm not big here. I'll just go to a different place and I'll have an online presence and that can connect to hundreds of countries around the world. And so I really hope that these people, the only way that these governments ever think of this is that it's a negative on what they're trying to do with their organization. They don't like change. Same thing that happened with all these other, we can go all the way back to the 60s. Same thing. Oh, these people are singing about civil rights. Well, let's investigate them. Let's get them, let's take them down to the freaking police station and stuff like that. Let's interrogate them. Let's try to scare them. It's one of the longest battles in music. But unlike those days, like I'm saying, you can get out into the public through social media. Now, if the social media is very censored and you can't do that, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to know about that in Egypt. But
well, I think too, this generally speaking, this is important for, I feel like this is an important lesson for the entire music industry because it shows how it can be generated anywhere.
Well, of course.
Under any kind of regime. And
music is triumphant for all in no matter where you are. There's very few people I've ever heard of that are like, music, I met a couple people.
My mother met a woman who said, and she quotes, I hate music.
Yeah, there's a couple people that are like that in this world.
All of music? You hate all of music?
But for, I'd probably argue maybe like 90 to 99% of people in the world, music is a very effective medium of entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like you're saying, it kind of goes into what I was saying about globalism, is that this genre can grow in a place that you would think would be so hard to grow, and it's defying it, and it's almost like a bonus to the story of the genre and getting social change out there, is, showing like we are defying these people, and so we can prove our message through our music, which, if that's the most, instrumental thing with music, is getting your message out there, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's positive and it's not just negative, which is what it seems like if the governments are going after, like I said, free elections, democracy, economic freedom, and women's rights. If they have like songs that are like, well, screw all that, we're doing great. No, that's where music can be dangerous.
A lot of the lyrics that have grown criticism are mostly due to the genre talking about alcoholism. I guess, like, not to a certain extent, but drinking alcohol and I guess what they would consider debauchery, basically.
Right. And it feels like it's interesting too.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man.
It's interesting too because you can get music that is the whole genre is associated with it, even if it doesn't have to deal with things maybe that are prohibited.
Yeah.
So we saw that a lot in the 90s and the 60s here in America, where it's like, oh, you guys are hippies, or you guys are doing rap and hip hop, so automatically it's going to be about the worst things in the world. And it's like, no, it's about our lives and what we're doing and like what we see on day to day. It's about the human connection, which is what all music's about.
Well, and to draw the parallel to American music industry, it wasn't too long ago when we were running into these problems.
I mean, you could argue sometimes even still. It's just one of those things where, again, music is one of the few things in this world that can pierce almost any ideology based on the emotional connection that it has. Mm-hmm. And so I hope for these musicians that they can either inspire change in their country, they can be successful, maybe if they want to use it as a vehicle to get out of this authoritative government and get away from it, or that they can basically, at bare minimum, play songs and not be persecuted for just music. Yeah. Again, these people aren't, there's some music that does inspire violence, that inspires, negative things, like I'm saying, especially towards women or towards different genders and sexuality. And I don't agree with that, but especially if your music is based off the things I was just talking about earlier, at the root of the issue, it's the government. It's not the music.
Well, I think it's a freedom of speech thing as well, which in Egypt is not as robust as it is here, where it, you were saying things you don't agree with, that it's still considered music.
It's still music. I'm not going to be like, oh, this thing that
might be shitty music.
Yeah, right. If I'm like, this stuff that's super racist, sexist, or whatever, it's still music.
Yeah.
It just comes down to, on a government level, having the ability to ban it is very scary. I mean, you can make your argument whatever you want about a private company, can be like, no, we don't want that on our platform or whatever. But when it's literally banned an entire region by your government, there's nothing much you can do. Mm-hmm. And so I hope for those people, and I hope they can get out of this oppression or cause social change in their country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Colin, you got a spicy story.
So I told Joe, I said, I got one for you and your expertise. And so I didn't really show him that much about it, since, Joe, you're a photographer, videographer, content creator, anything under that umbrella, basically.
Yep.
As most freelancers are.
Check.
Right. So Dua Lipa is being sued for posting paparazzi photos of herself to Instagram. Mm-hmm. So she's being sued by Integral Images, and they're accusing the pop star of copyright infringement over a February 2019 social media post.
So over 2 years old.
2 years old, which I think will be important later, which we'll get to. A screen grab of Lipa's alleged use of the photo, which shows the star standing in line at an airport while wearing an oversized hat, is included as an exhibit with the complaint. Integrated Images claims the photo was taken just a few days before Lipa posted it to her account with the caption, "I'll be living under this big fluffy hat until further notice," which was also her statement on the issue. Now, wouldn't that be great? No,
She's on the stand.
yeah, she's like, "I'll be living." That would I do it. If you're not listening to this, but do it anyway. Integral Images is looking for $150,000. Or an award of
one social media post.
Yes. Or an award of actual damages and disgorgement of all defendants' profits attributed to the infringement.
That's
which basically, this basically means that they're asking the court, we would like at least $150,000, but if you think our argument's good enough, you can give us more money.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. Because
right.
it's a universal principle of you can always ask for a little more. The worst thing they can say is no.
Yeah.
So they're just saying, like, if you guys think this is worth more.
Or burn your bridge with Dua Lipa.
Yeah.
Never work with her again.
So they're also asking for a enjoining, which basically means legal banning of Dua Lipa from further acts of infringement on their material, as well as litigation costs and attorney fees. So that basically means that if she, had an infringement again, she would have to pay for Internal Images legal fees and attorney fees. So, they're really trying to get her not to do this ever again, which her, quote unquote, could be somebody on her team, not necessarily her. So Billboard adds this has been a very common occurrence in the last few years with acts such as Ariana Grande, Bieber, and just Jennifer Lopez being sued by respective paparazzi companies for copyright infringement, and that images have been settled out of court, which Grande had to settle twice with this one paparazzi, basically. And so, Joe, you're a photographer. I think let's open it up and explain why they kind of have precedent here. Would you like to explain basic photo copyright law?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a lot different in some regards to, I guess, the music industry and how the music industry has a lot of different sections.
It's weirdly simplified.
It's much more simplified. Basically, the standard ownership of a photo is whoever takes the photo owns that photo.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter if it's a landscape, if it's a portrait, if it's a nude, like at that point.
It doesn't matter what the subject is necessarily.
It does not matter what the subject is. You as the photographer own that photo. Now, where it changes is depending on the type of work you're doing. So if I were to come to a client, which a lot of my clients, especially music clients, is to certain extent a work for hire situation, where you are agreeing upon a sum of money that is paid once, and they are allowed to use that image however they want. So say like I photographed an artist and we took a bunch of photographs. I got paid $300, but later on those photographs blow up and they're in a Macy's ad. They're in all this advertising. It's in Times Square. It's whatever. Well, at the end of the day, I was paid that money, and I agreed upon that lump sum of money.
It was a done deal right there.
It was a done deal right there. So I do not get any take of what that is. And then depending on who you're working for, sometimes you don't even have credit rights. With images.
Because they can argue that in your contract.
A lot of the times now, I refuse to do that. And a lot of artists are refusing to do that now because it's just I am always under the feeling of like you should credit your photographer
because it's their artistic
it's their
image.
Artistic
and
voice.
So that's their style and that's their product, so it doesn't make sense.
And although you're paying them for those images, it's just a nice gesture to be able to tag them.
It's part of your
credit them.
It's part of your compensation in a way.
Exactly.
But obviously not. I'm not going into any promotion is a lot of compensation. It's just more of that's how you, especially in this business, prove like, oh look, I can actually have proof. It's like I took this person's photos. You can see my credit here and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But where the image is the copyright is created is essentially once the image is taken. Now, you could argue the same thing for a song, but it is a lot harder to enforce that with a song than it is with an image, because with an image, especially digital imaging now, you have so much metadata. that's already baked into the image to where it has the photographer's name, it has the camera type, it has it literally has the type of lens you use, the shutter,
it comes down to the camera.
day, what image it is.
Because it's so important in that community to know
All
exactly
of those things.
when.
Because, if someone rips your image off,
you
can
proof.
reverse search it and you have proof and you can enforce it. So having an image as a photographer, I don't know a lot of photographers that copyright their images directly with the Copyright Office, unless it is through fine art photography. That is generally when you are doing that, and it's more to do with galas and stuff like that, right?
When you're more of an artiste, photographer in that way.
A lot of photographers would consider what they do artistry, and I don't. I know a lot of fine art photographers that don't have, they don't copyright their work. And
I guess it would be more of, like you're saying, you would be more involved in art galas and stuff like that.
Exactly. Now, where a lot of people get, and I would say, honestly, a lot of photographers get a bad rep is because of paparazzi. I want to make that clear. It is my opinion that paparazzi have actually damaged credibility of a lot of photographers because of how ruthless they are with what they enforce, with how they act towards subjects, with
invasion of
privacy.
Decent privacy.
Yeah, which I'm a photographer that is very much a believer of privacy and asking permission.
And these people are
not.
Yeah, they're completely the opposite.
And there are many famous street photographers that have published work, have made millions of dollars selling their work with photos that they have not gained permission of their subjects for.
And sometimes it might be worth from the photographer angle to go after, and sometimes they just go, well, we get the publicity from this, so that's good enough for me.
Well, and the artistry aspect of it is, well, if I'm capturing a moment, I don't want to stage the moment, right? I don't want to ask permission to stage this moment, because at the end of the day, you've changed the outcome of the image with how you present to
you've
your
added
subject.
You've added
your hand to something that you might just want to capture the full situation with, right? But in this case, as much as I dislike paparazzi, I have to side with the paparazzi on this one
because
it is considered their work. It's like a paintbrush. It's like creating a song for photographers. Even if it's a shitty song, right? Even if it's a shitty song, if your song blows up, you still want to get paid for it, right?
Yeah, and it comes down to precedent, really.
If I'm rolling down in the deep, I want some song rights.
So your brain goes numb. Anyway,
but yeah, so that's kind of my answer. Sorry if that's
that's perfect. So I would say, maybe adding on to that, paparazzi in a lot of ways, kind of. I mean, I'm sure there's very artistic paparazzi, maybe, but
maybe
I can't just take that.
I
can't just put a broad paintbrush and be like, none of these are artistic. I guess.
Well, it's their opinion, right?
Yeah, but I feel like paparazzi are innately more interested in the sole value of their photos than a lot of photographers are, especially dollar amounts.
Yes.
So
exactly.
I feel like you're seeing this right here, where it's a bigger deal maybe to them than my previous example, where maybe if you're in a type of photographer who takes album art or something like that, or a photo, and some big artist uses your photo and they credit you, but they didn't pay for you, you might be like, you know what? This is important to me. People are going to hire me for stuff like this in the future. I'll just let it go. Maybe I'll send a message and be like, hey, we got to maybe figure this out.
Up,
but you're going to be a bit more given leeway to these people, because it seems like, oh, this could maybe help my career in a way. Paparazzi are literally going straight for the dollar amount every time. They want these photos behind the scenes that someone like an E! Entertainment or the local news or a publication, what you get in the grocery store, is going to want to pay big bucks for. So they're a lot more interested in that monetary value, in my opinion, than the artistic nature of it. And it doesn't really add to their career or brand to be like, oh, Integral Images took this photo of Dua Lipa in the airport. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't. They're not going to be like, Brad Pitt isn't going to come up and be like, hey, I saw that Dua Lipa picture of her in the big hat. I would love for you to come see me in the Atlanta airport.
See me naked.
Right. You know what I mean? No. So you would agree with that, right? The paparazzi this is a bigger deal to them than maybe a album artist photographer or regular artist photographer.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because it's how they make their bread and butter. Like at the end of the day, they're not a photographer for the everyday person.
And they make a lot of this money in a more straightforward way, because it's just like, find where this person is, take a photo.
Like, honestly, the uglier the photo, the better sometimes for paparazzi, because they sell it to whatever tabloid magazine wants to pay thousands of dollars for it.
Right.
So,
it would be the equivalent if you went to somebody who had a product that they were going to put in stores, and then you stole it physically, and then you sold it in a store for yourself to make money, is basically what happened here, because they're like, oh, well, it's out now. I can't get a publication, in the grocery store to buy this photo for a bunch of money.
Yep.
So thanks, Dua Lipa. So that's why we're suing you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this hounding of people and this utter distaste of paparazzi really, actually, in my opinion, harms
photography.
Harms photographers. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a gig. I've been at concerts before where people, security members, or even fans, have looked at me wrong,
thinking just a vulture.
I'm a vulture.
Yeah.
For being there, that I'm a waste of space, and have said things to me that I don't particularly appreciate, and I'm just trying to do my job just like anybody else there, right? But it's a lot of it has to do with that invasion of privacy that I morally do not agree with. However, the way the law is put into place, in the way that it's said, it's not just protecting paparazzi. It's protecting all photographers.
Right.
So if we were to get rid of this law, say we were to get rid of this law, right? Well, imagine all of the street photographers that would have to grab mountains of paperwork to get all of their subjects to sign, or possibly come out of the woodwork later when they have a very expensive photograph that's valued highly, that might even be an integral part of culture and art form.
Because they weren't allowed to do it, or they weren't allowed
to photograph this person on a street. And that's the thing. It's like public environments.
We're also going into personality rights.
Exactly. And
which
for
Dua
those
Lipa,
of you listening, celebrities actually have different rights.
That's the personality rights.
Than regular everyday people do.
Right.
And where the line is on that is actually pretty gray. We don't really know where
it is arguable, kind of like our last topic, it's arguable in court.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And it's also very important, as personality rights are determined by the state, not the federal government. So we talked about this with Rachel Gutman about 2 episodes ago, I believe, with personality rights. But the idea is that when you're that famous, you kind of lose that public privacy.
Yeah.
Because, if you've seen in a movie, if they go take a camera down there, they have to have the right, they have to clear it with a venue usually. They have to go up to these people who are just randomly in the
video
shot.
waivers.
Yeah,
video
because
rights.
they have that right to privacy. When you become so famous that people are, know who you are, know everything about you, there's actually a thing that comes into place where you kind of lose parts of those rights. Now, you do gain some things, but that act of, personality rights changes depending on your status. And again, like you're saying, it's gray. It's completely arguable.
Yep.
There isn't like, you have this, this, and this, and now you've changed into this different set of personality rights.
Well, and then the rights of images in general, and when images are taken, say we were to get rid of these laws, right? These ownership laws of photos, and now it's like the ownership belongs to whoever you photographed. Well, can you imagine all of the photojournalists? And
they lose their career. They don't have a product.
Yeah, all the hell that would go. We wouldn't be able to even photograph the president.
Right.
Because they would absolutely rather not be photographed.
Well, especially like you're saying, if it's culturally important or something like that.
Or at a concert.
Yeah.
And I will say this, some artists are ruthless to where if you gave them that power, if you took a Instagram video at a concert, you'd get a cease and desist.
Yeah. You would. There are some
Absolutely.
people that will do that because that's
And it
one
might
of
not
their.
even be the artist, it might be the label.
Well, that's part of their rights. Is their rights of publicity is they have the right to basically use their personality and their looks and likeness because it has value now because you're that famous. So they're arguing, well, you're hurting my trademark. So that's kind of the argument there. I agree with Joe completely. I think that this comes down to, everyone's always like, oh, Dua Lipa's sued. It's like Dua Lipa's LLC and all that stuff sued because that's where the money is. It's her and Dua Lipa.
So bringing it back to this particular case,
Mm-hmm.
150 grand for one Instagram photo, they ain't getting it.
They're monetarily, it's
they're
like
not
I'm saying,
gonna get
they're
it.
shooting for the moon and they're hoping that this is what they're hoping for. Like in these other cases I said with Grande Bieber, like that you're just going to settle is that you're going to go,
Exactly.
here's 10 grand. Now you don't have to pay your lawyers. And so
Which, is
works.
the business practice, and it has shown
because
that
they're
it
in the
works.
right legally to do this. So again, kind of going back to our first topic with T Swift and stuff, it's just easier to just go, here you go, here's some money.
It is.
And take the plea deal essentially.
Well, and this is why it's so important that if you are you're not a Dua Lipa, you're an artist starting out, that you have buzz, you have to be aware of these kinds of rules.
Because at the end of the day,
it can screw you.
it can screw you, and it comes down to, especially with paparazzi, if you're famous enough for paparazzi, they are literally in it for the money. That's why you become a paparazzi. And so they are more monetarily based and have less leeway than maybe like a photographer who just comes to your show who's trying to get better or like make his
they
own
do not
profile.
care.
They only care about the money.
Yeah.
So that's why this is a big deal to them, because they're like, oh my God, I could have sold this photo to Dua Lipa maybe, or maybe to another thing, and we could have made a good chunk of change off of this.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. The thing is that I feel like Dua is going to have to probably settle out of court, which will in the end be cheaper in my opinion, because I think she's in the wrong here based on who has the copyright, which is Integral Images.
Which we'd like to point out too, morally, I don't think she's in the wrong.
No,
But
I don't
legally
think.
she is.
Yeah, it's terrible to have these people following you day in and day out.
Yeah.
Especially, the one that gets me is when these celebrities have children and they go after their children.
It rubs me the wrong. And that's the thing. I hate that. I have to sit here and be like, we can't do anything.
But that's what
that's-
people assume with photographers sometimes too, is that they're kind of part of that crew from the paparazzi, and that gets put on you and your other colleagues to do photography. It's like, oh, you guys are the ruthless people who just take photos for money because you're money hungry. And it's like, no, we're not. And so morally, yeah, I'm against the idea of paparazzi. And if you are too, it comes down to consumer interest. So I don't think we're ever going to get to a point in our lives where the idea of celebrities is boring and we don't care what happens to them. So paparazzi doesn't have work because nobody will buy the photos.
Yeah. I think paparazzi is here to stay, unfortunately.
I think it'll change a little bit thanks to social media, because people are more interested now in what celebrities take themselves, especially for what they decide to put out themselves, compared to maybe like 30 or 40 years ago, where it was like, oh, well, here he is in his bathrobe in his bathroom. Well, it's like, well, now celebrities just put that out as content themselves, so they've effectively devalued that market in a lot of ways.
And which has honestly been the smartest and most effective thing.
Yeah, and I hate, and then at the end of the day, the loss is that celebrities maybe have to
it
lose
also,
their privacy in that way to try to thwart people,
and it devalues photos in general, but photos have been steadily devalued.
as it becomes more normal in our culture, not just like a photo album in the
And
corner of your
video
house.
becoming the normal.
Right, especially video, because video used to be a big deal. Like you have a camera, you know what I mean?
Oh, and it's still a big deal, dude.
Yeah.
So when I was a photographer, I was just a photographer for a while.
Yeah, you were, because you were getting your craft.
Yeah, I was learning, I was getting my craft together, and then I got into the video world, man, and you make more money. You just make more money doing it.
People want that video content because I think
It is so high value.
I think it's high valued because the ease of use of photography has gone down because of the way the phones work, but there's such a difference between someone filming on a camera who knows what they're doing compared to you filming on your iPhone. It's a huge difference. But you could, but like that
Some
difference.
people don't know that.
Right. but the difference between a photo on your iPhone and a photo on your camera, still huge. But I would argue it's not as huge as the difference between video.
Yeah.
Huge. Well, Dua, good luck. I hope they don't take it for so much money, but
she'll be fine.
Yeah,
she'll bounce back.
Right.
But Colin, what have you been listening to?
Oh, well, I've been listening to a plethora of things.
You have the tab pulled up already.
Well,
you're prepared.
I kept it over. This was me earlier again listening to Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift and being like, here's my critical listening ears. Let's figure out what's going on. I've been listening.
I like to point out, Colin has literally a Y2K playlist.
Okay, so I have if you're one of the 3 people that uses YouTube Music, you can find these playlists because they're public, because that's just the default. But I make decade playlists, so I literally go decade by decade, and music I listen to I just throw in there. So if you want to be like, it's 1994, here's the 90s playlist. So first off, I've been listening to, I wanted to shout out this because people have known me as this person for a very long time. Joe's looking at it and realizing, oh, it's not that one. It's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah, it is.
So I really like a song that's known as Snake Farm.
Yeah.
Snake Farm by Ray Wiley Hubbard.
Which I've met him.
Yeah. I've seen him live at Americana Fest here in Nashville, and he's a musician's musician. Like, everyone I meet is like really into that kind of stuff. I never meet people that are just like, for lack of a better term, normies, who are just like, oh, yeah, I love it.
Is this 4chan now?
Yeah, right. But basically, Snake Farm is one of the most ridiculous songs, and I dare you, if you got like a crowd that's not just listening to pop music, just put on Snake Farm for about 30 seconds, and people will be like, what the hell are we listening to? And all it's about is literally him making a joke because the word snake farm sounds stupid. So literally the words are snake farm. It just sounds nasty. Snake farm, it pretty much is. Yeah. And so that's like one of the funniest songs. I remember when I was working on 2nd Avenue mixing, I was talking to a guy backstage, and he was playing an acoustic set, and I said it. I was like, listen to this music. And he goes, I'll play that. It was 4 o'clock on afternoon, and it was like all these families there, all this stuff. And all of a sudden, and I'd never seen more weird looks in my life than him, because he literally went from like, guys, this is Jake Owen. Next up, Ray Wiley Hubbard. And everyone was like, what the hell is this song? Also, last thing, people have cool tattoos of that song, and it's the mouse that's by the python that he references in that song. And I'm like, that's the most obscure tattoo, but I'm about it.
It's amazing. I love it so much. Oh, well, I think I found the male Phoebe Bridgers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a bold claim.
It's a bold claim, but I think I found him. And his name is Joe Van, and he has an album called Found in the Smoke, and it's amazing. And you should all check it out. And I think he's going to explode. I think he's going to take off.
All right. Joe's very good at this when it comes to A&R stuff. So
I would love to have an A&R.
I will keep this together. We'll come back to this. I'll be like 3 months from now. We'll check out how Joe Van is. I will pay him money if he has his next album in a van down by the river. That's what I want.
Down by the river.
Right. That's what I want for his next album. If Joe's listening to
for 12 hours.
Yeah, he's been drinking coffee 12 hours in the basement. If you have no idea what we're talking about, sorry, but here we are.